never took.
For the life of me, I never really understood why so many of you all love Gandalf as a character. Yeah, he's cool and all. You know, he's a wizard, he's really old and powerful, he sacrifices his life and comes back from the dead, but he was always grumpy and kind of a bit annoying to me as I was reading through Lord of the Rings for the first time. Also, shameless plug to subscribe because I'm only halfway through these books and publishing all my thoughts as I read through it for the first time, so make sure you subscribe. But I never really understood why so many people loved Gandalf. He wasn't obviously a secondary character, and I didn't hate him by any stretch of the imagination, but compared to people like Gimli, Frodo, or my one true love, Boromir, I just thought he was a bit dull. That was until I read the final chapter in Book 3 of Lord of the Rings, which is the midway point in the Two Towers. I found so many instances where I just kind of fell in love with Gandalf for the first time, and I really understood why so many people love him as a character and say he is their favorite. So I want to talk about those moments that really struck me in this final chapter in the Book 3 of the Two Towers. Some are funny and comedic, some are just really tender, and I think Ian McKellen does a really great job as Gandalf in my opinion, but I wish the script gave him more time to actually be loving and tender to the hobbits, especially with Merry and Pippin. Because in the movies, he is kind of coughing and always looking annoyed with Pippin. He only explains stuff to him out of exasperation, but in the book, they honestly appear to have a really special relationship. Even Merry is in there too. They joke together, rib at each other, and Gandalf shows a lot of grace to Pippin after he messes up and looks into the Palantir. The movies have Gandalf a lot more stern and unyielding, but the books have Gandalf as an understanding father figure who knows Pippin made a mistake and regrets it, so he doesn't really hold it over his head or lambast him for making a mistake. It's honestly some of the most charming stuff in the book so far, and it really makes me love the character of Gandalf. But I want to start from the beginning of this chapter. The first interaction that Gandalf has that I love is his interaction with Merry. This is what the text says. "Are we riding far tonight, Gandalf?" asked Merry after a while. "I don't know how you feel with a small ragtag dangling behind you." Now this is what Saruman called him in the prior chapter, but the ragtag is tired and will be glad to stop dangling and lie down. "So you heard that," said Gandalf. "Don't let it rankle. Be thankful no longer words were aimed at you. He had his eye on you. If that is any comfort to your pride, I should say that, at the moment, you and Pippin are more in his thought than the rest of us. Who are you? How you came there? And why? What you know? Whether you were captured, and if so, how you escaped when all the orcs perished. It is with those little riddles that the great mind of Saruman is troubled. A sneer from him, Meriadoc, is a compliment, if you feel honored by his concern." "Thank you," said Merry, "but it is a great honor to dangle at your tail, Gandalf. For one thing, in that position, what is the chance of putting a question a second time? Are we riding far tonight?" Gandalf laughed. A most unquenchable hobbit. All wizards should have a hobbit or two in their care to teach them the meaning of the world and to correct them. This interaction is genuinely beautiful because, first off, Gandalf comforts Merry a bit after Merry seems offended by being called a name by Saruman. Gandalf says he should be honored, and that Merry and Pippin were likely on the forefront of his mind. But I also love how Merry doesn't really care for that answer. He has thick skin and was just kind of making a joke and ribs Gandalf for not really answering the question that he asked. And I love that he laughs here and shares a moment in fun with Merry. I think often in literature, some of the highest and mightiest characters often fall short in my opinion because they cannot relate to the immature and the young in the book. I think this is often true in the world that we live in too, where some people just have like a stick up their butt and cannot have fun no matter what happens in this world. But Gandalf, being as wise and as old as he is, still knows how to laugh with the hobbits. I find this humble and lovely for him as a character. And what he says about how every wizard should have a hobbit or two in their care is fantastic. I think Saruman honestly could have been saved from a lot of peril and corruption had he had Bilbo or Samwise as a friend. Or maybe even the old gaffer. Imagine the old gaffer talking to Saruman about his plans to make a new ring. I don't like that one bit, Master Saruman. You're meddling in things that you shouldn't meddle in. Let's take a walk together, you and I, in Fangorn Forest and marvel at the things that grow. It just kind of makes me want a hobbit as a companion in my life. Honestly, it makes me want to be a hobbit. I always think I admired the hobbits and loved the life that they lived before I read the books, but now that I am halfway through the books, I find that hobbits are the most incredible little creatures in all of fantasy literature. They're like the weakest creatures imaginable, but the greatest and the strongest at the same time. I just love them and want to be one or have one at my side. Their simple-mindedness often just kind of gives them a really good grasp on reality and what is important in the world. I think humans need those reminders on a daily basis. Now, the next instance I loved with Gandalf came when Pippin stole the Palantir from him. This was the interaction that we get. So this is the thief, said Gandalf. Hastily he cast his cloak over the globe where it lay. But you, Pippin, this is a grievous turn to things. He knelt by Pippin's body. The hobbit was lying on his back, rigid, with unseeing eyes staring up at the sky. The devilry! What mischief has he done to himself and to all of us? The wizard's face was drawn and haggard. He took Pippin's hand and bent over his face, listening for his breath. Then he laid his hand on his brow. The hobbit shuddered. His eyes closed. He cried out and sat up, staring in bewilderment at all the faces around him, pale in the moonlight. And later, a few paragraphs later, it says this. Look at me, said Gandalf. Pippin looked straight up into his eyes. The wizard held his gaze for a moment in silence, and his face grew gentler, and the shadow of a smile appeared. He laid his hand softly on Pippin's head. All right, he said, say no more. You have taken no harm. There is no lie in your eyes, as I feared, but he did not speak long with you. A fool, but an honest fool you remain, Peregrine Took. Wiser ones might have done worse in such a pass, but mark this, you have been saved, and all your friends too, mainly by good fortune, as it is called. You cannot count on it a second time. If he had questioned you, almost certainly you would have told all that you know, to the ruin of us all. But he was too eager. He did not want information only, he wanted you, quickly, so that he could deal with you in the Dark Tower, slowly. Don't shudder. If you will meddle in the affairs of wizards, you must be prepared to think of such things. But come, I forgive you. Be comforted. Things have not turned out as evilly as they might. He lifted Pippin gently and carried him back to his bed. Merry followed and sat down beside him. Lie there and rest if you can, Pippin, said Gandalf. Trust me. If you feel an itch in your palms again, tell me of it. Such things can be cured. But anyway, my dear hobbit, don't put a lump of rock under my elbow again. Now I will leave you two together for a while. This is all just so tender. Significantly more tender than the movie where he is just kind of stern and unyielding with Pippin. I think it's fantastic, the descriptions of how he holds him, how he questions him sternly, yet with this look in his eye as if he's kind of kind and compassionate toward him. And then most of all, I love that he lifts Pippin gently and carries him back to his bed like a child that fell asleep in the car. This is just a side of Gandalf that I'm sure has probably come up previously in the book, but has really struck me in this specific chapter. He is just a much deeper father figure than I thought I'd see. He sits there and calls him my dear hobbit. It's just all just fantastic stuff from Gandalf and really makes me love him as a character. I think this specific interaction is just like Pippin did something really egregious. Touching this Palantir could have ruined the entire thing. And Gandalf, rather than just kind of lambast him and rib him and tell him how stupid he was for doing this, really shows him a lot of tenderness and a lot of fatherly love here in this moment. And I think that's a rarity in a lot of stories and novels, to be honest. Sometimes if a character does something stupid like this and you have a character like Gandalf, that character like Gandalf just goes into that character. But now, in this instance, I think J.R.R. Tolkien knew the power of grace and compassion and mercy, like I kind of talked about in the previous chapter, but it's being fulfilled not just in grace and compassion and mercy toward people who are evil, but it's also kind of falling in line with grace and mercy and compassion toward people who just make a simple mistake, who are really good-hearted and good-natured. And I think that's a good reminder for us all. Everyone makes mistakes sometimes. We don't have to hold them in the dirt or kind of hold their head down. I think it's really immature and good to kind of lift them up and help them out and not let them live with that guilt. I think in this instance, yeah, he might still feel guilty for what he did, but it's not like he has this thing overhanging his head for the entire rest of the series, I'm sure. I think he'll be able to move on really quick from this. And I think the reason he's able to move on really quick from this is because of the response of Gandalf. I just think it's beautiful. But the last moment is a great one with Pippin. And it's just like a really great line that he delivers at the end of this chapter, along with just a really funny moment. Now, this is what the book says, and I laughed out loud at this when I first read it, but it comes after Gandalf and Pippin need to rush off to Minas Tirith. They call Shadowfax and they are rushing away on his back, and Pippin just won't stop asking him questions. Honestly, it really is like the kid in the car analogy. And look what happens when Gandalf kind of gets annoyed with him. "I wish I had known all this before," said Pippin. "I had no notion of what I was doing." "Oh, yes, you had," said Gandalf. "You knew you were behaving wrongly and foolishly, and you told yourself so, though you did not listen. I did not tell you all this before, because it is only by musing on all that has happened that I have at last understood, even as we ride together. But if I had spoken sooner, it would not have lessened your desire, or made it easier to resist. On the contrary, no, the burned hand teaches best. After that, advice about fire goes to the heart." "It does," said Pippin. "If all the 7 stones were laid out before me now, I should shut my eyes and put my hands in my pockets." "Good," said Gandalf. "That is what I hoped." "But I should like to know," Pippin began. "Mercy," cried Gandalf. "If the giving of information is to be the cure of your inquisitiveness, I shall spend all the rest of my days in answering you. What more do you want to know? The names of all the stars and of all living things in the whole history of Middle-earth and over heaven and the sundering seas?" laughed Pippin. "Of course. What less? But I am not in a hurry tonight." It's just such a great moment here. Pippin really knows how to jab at Gandalf, and Gandalf knows how to be a good sport about it. In the movies, it's shown more often than not as annoyance and exasperation, but in the book, as I've said before, it's more like a father and son relationship. It's so lovely. And the final thing that Gandalf says that I loved was, "And so we fly not from danger, but into great danger. Every stride of Shadowfax bears you nearer to the land of shadow Peregrine took." It is just so stinking good. I cannot get over the little bits of wisdom that Gandalf drops here. And I think he kind of just knows that this line might actually shut Pippin up for a while, which it kind of does, but he warns him that they are going straight into danger, not away from it. And this prepares Pippin to know what's ahead and to mentally get strong as it's happening. It's just a great move from Gandalf, and it really helps me to love him as a character a lot more than I previously did. I now understand why so many of you think he's one of the best characters in the whole series. I think at the moment, after this chapter, I probably think the same now. So, thank you guys. Finally, I'm loving Gandalf as a character. But make sure you subscribe, like the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.